think you should all be able to see my slides right now. So I'm Anthony, like I introduced myself earlier, and I will be covering the innovation project, which is the next major part of FLL. Now, before we get started, I know a lot of you probably have questions about things like the project, the robot game. We can get to those in our designated Q&A session, so feel free to ask your questions then. Let's get started. So the first topic is obviously, what is the project? So in the project, you identify a problem that's related to the challenge, which this year is being active. You research a problem and solution ideas. You design an innovative solution. You share and iterate on that solution. And then finally, you pitch your solution to the judges at FTC. I mean, FLL, sorry, not FTC. Sorry, I thought I had a time machine there. So let's get going with a step-by-step guide for doing the project in your team. So we'll cover right now the kickoff, all the way up to the competition, which is when you're pitching your project. So we'll get started with the kickoff. So during the kickoff, you probably received a whole bunch of resources, including things like the engineering notebook, the team meeting guide, and the rubrics and other resources available on the FLL website. It's imperative that you actually read all these sources because especially if you are an existing coach, there are many changes here, which we'll get to eventually. But there are many changes here, and I recommend you read all of the resources you have available to you, as those will be helpful and those will be very informative in actually doing your project. So let's keep going. Once you've figured out what the project is, and once you've read all the resources that FLL makes available to you, it's time to ideate, to come up with ideas for problems and potential projects. During this stage, you want to find potential problems about being active. Now, there are many sources of inspiration that you can use to find these problems if you're kind of a bit don't know where to go. First provides actually Project Sparks, which is located in the engineering notebook. These are based on mission models, and these are good starting points for potential problems that your team might like to investigate. In addition, FLL this year has actually posted a set of inspirational season resources, a set of links that can also help your team get started. They're buried on the FLL website, but I've made a tiny URL for you there, tinyurl.com/I-need-inspiration. That should get you to the inspirational season resources that FIRST provides. You can also get inspiration from elsewhere. Life experiences, family and friends, online research, hobbies and interests, observations about the world, really anywhere. I think this year a particularly interesting source of inspiration might be the current pandemic, because as you know, this pandemic is probably posing a lot of barriers to staying fit and staying healthy. And so that's a potential way you might get inspired to create your project. While you're doing this, you might want to think about solutions, but don't force it because now is not necessarily the time. And some things to keep in mind while you're coming up with ideas. Every idea is valuable, even the ridiculous ones. The more ideas you have, the higher the chance your team can find a project that they're passionate about. In addition, keep an open mind. Projects might come from anywhere. Projects might come from jokes. Projects might come from, remarks. And so you want to keep an open mind to make sure you're including all the ideas. And finally, include everyone. The more people you include in this ideation process, the more problems you'll have, the more ideas you'll have, and the higher the quality of your project will be. As a coach, your role is to give encouragement and guidance during this process. And remember, team members are the ones who come up with the ideas. As a coach, you can give guidance, but bear in mind that you should let the team members make the ideas. So by now, you should have some ideas about what to do for the project, which brings us to the next step, which is investigating and choosing a problem. So the inevitable question that comes up is, which idea should you choose? And to answer that, you should ask a few questions about each problem. Number one, how widespread is it? What's the impact? Problems that are more widespread and have a higher impact matter more to you, to the public, and to the judges. Second, how specific is it? Can we explain it clearly? Problems that you can explain clearly and that are specific are easier to develop solutions for and easier to reason about. Next, what research can we do? Who can we talk to? As we'll get to later, research is a major part of the project, and you should consider research in the early stages of a project. Obscure problems like very obscure problems that might not have that many experts you might want to consider leaving for another time. Next, can we solve it realistically and legally? The project is also about a solution. And while, again, you don't need to have a clear picture of a solution just yet, you still need to consider whether a problem is going to be feasible to solve. And finally, how passionate are we about the problem? Your team is not going to want to solve a problem that they're not passionate about. And so consider what your team actually wants and what your team actually enjoys, and try to work that into your problem. So here's how we as a team chose a problem back when I was doing FLL. First, we would task each member with brainstorming and doing some preliminary research on a problem idea. Second, we'd gather all the members and we'd have each of them present their potential problem ideas. And finally, third, we'd get together, we'd debate, and we'd eventually decide which problem to do using those questions. So as an example, actually, back in 2017, the challenge was animal allies, and we were tasked with finding a problem related to animal welfare. And so we had these two ideas. We thought about preventing roadkill and about alleviating separation anxiety, which is the anxiety some pets feel when their owners leave them for extended periods of time. We initially considered the roadkill problem. We found it was widespread. Most of us have encountered roadkill on the road before. It has a large impact because it does cause millions, if not billions of dollars of damage, and it's also very easy to explain. Roadkill, we've all encountered it. The unfortunate part, and the nail in the coffin, was that it was infeasible to solve. We actually considered going full on machine learning and AI, but we realized that as a team comprised of mostly middle school students, we were not going to be able to finesse the language conscious of MATLAB just yet. So eventually, that left separation anxiety as a problem. And we actually ran through the factors as well for this. We did some preliminary research. We found that dogs and cats are relatively popular, and that since we're also busy, we often leave home for extended periods of time. So the problem is very widespread. In addition, while they're anxious, pets often get stressed. They can cause economic damage, they can run away, they can cause damage to their owners, and oftentimes they can just be plain sad. So we found this was a large impact. We found this problem had a large impact. And so combined with the other factors like it being specific, easy to explain, feasible to solve, and the fact that we were passionate about it, a lot of our team members had pets, we decided to choose separation anxiety as our problem. Once you've chosen a problem, it's time to double down and do some research. So the first question when you're doing research is, what should you research for? Why are we researching? Well, you're researching to get clarification and to contextualize a problem. Number one, you should be asking, did we pick the right problem? Like we asked, like we did back in 2017, you should be constantly reassessing whether your problem is the one you want to solve or if you want to change your problem. In addition, what's the impact? Are there statistics? If you can get these, you can convince the judge that your problem matters, and you can convince the judge that you picked the problem for the right reason. In addition, why is this a problem? What's the root cause? What's the mechanism behind what's happening here? That way, you can find solutions that target the root causes rather than simply not doing anything. And most importantly, what are the current solutions? You want to investigate the current solutions to find what they're doing well and their shortfalls so you can improve upon them and innovate. And of course, you can research other aspects of a problem like scope, time frame, and more. This is the part of the presentation where we inevitably talk about different research sources. So in research, there's two types of sources, secondary sources and primary sources. With secondary sources, you have material that covers, that summarizes primary sources or otherwise, or is sort of detached from personal experience. So that includes things like printed material, so books, magazines, newspapers, and more, online resources, for example, websites, research reports, or PDFs, and surveys, which if you make them simple enough and pass them to enough people in your community, can give you valuable insight around each problem. In addition, you have primary sources, so things like personal experience, experts, and field trips to actual places that can give you some insight into the problem. You also want to bear in mind the limitations of each source. For example, secondary sources such as printed material and online resources can be quite untrustworthy, as is evidenced by the recent fake news problem. In addition, surveys have a limited scope and they're a lot of effort to create. With primary sources have limitations too. They're really difficult to find. You need to schedule interviews either over the phone or over Zoom, and you'll need to actually make sure you ask the right questions to get the right get the right evidence. And as for field trips, well, the other limitation is that you can't have them under COVID-19 unless you're in a country that has managed to battle the coronavirus successfully. Fortunately, the US is not one of them. But with all these in mind, you should be using a variety of both types of sources, secondary sources and primary sources. In this way, you'll be able to understand what the problem really is. Now, if you look at the team meeting guide, they suggest you devote 1 session to research. In our experience, this is not enough. Research is perhaps one of the most important parts of the project. So you'll want to spend at least 2 to 3 weeks on researching the project and getting as many sources as you can find. As an example, here's our research that we did. We did 4 types of research: online research, looking at research reports, conducting surveys, and contacting experts. We used online sources to get a brief overview of what separation anxiety was. And we used reports to extract valuable statistics that we were then able to show to the judges. We used a survey to gain insight onto pet behaviors. And finally, we contacted numerous experts, including Bloomberg, who we contacted for engineering advice, Montville Animal Hospital, with whom we actually did a demo of our project, which we'll talk about later, and with whom we actually learned about how separation anxiety affects animals. And finally, we contacted Bergen County Animal Shelter to discuss some of the wider factors and wider statistics that might result from separation anxiety. Finally, we considered current solutions. So we actually made this comparison chart where we compared 3 existing solutions, and we found that they were either quite expensive or they had significant shortfalls that we wanted to correct. So that meant that our solution had to check all of these boxes, have all the features that we wanted, while being at an affordable price. And now with research, we could get onto the next step of the project, which is developing the solution. So in terms of solutions, there are 2 major types. Number 1, you can create a completely new solution, or you can improve an existing solution, or you can even do a combination of both. So with developing solutions, there's a process. It's not just one step. First, you'll have to brainstorm ideas with your team. You'll have to get as many ideas as you can for the solution, similar to the problem. Then you want to take all those ideas and you want to select a solution based on the factors that we'll talk about later. Next, you want to plan the solution, considering its things like feasibility and planning how you might actually build a solution. And finally, you want to build a sort of proof of concept, if you will. You want to build the solution. And when selecting and planning your solution, don't forget that there are a myriad of factors that you have to take into account, including things like feasibility. Is this solution realistic? Potential issues. Are there any unwanted consequences? Cost, because if no one can pay for something, it doesn't help anyone. And manufacturing and design, because you need to be able to make the solution a reality and get that on a massive scale. As for building your solution, building a proof of concept, there are 3 major ways in which you can build your solution. The first way is through just doing a detailed drawing to present to the judges. The second way, which is has a slightly higher fidelity, but is relatively simple, is building a non-functional model out of simple materials like those white bricks that FLL sends you, or things like cheap materials like cardboard. And finally, if you're a really advanced team, which we do not recommend for any rookie teams, you can try your hand at building a working prototype with a full functionality. And all these 3 ways, you'll need to develop and explain your solution thoroughly so that the judges can understand that you really did the solution. For your drawing, you'll need to explain how the solution works. For your model, you need to explain what sort of functionality it will have beyond the mere appearance. And for your working prototype, you'll need to explain how you actually made the prototype in the first place so that judges don't confuse your team's work for your coach's work. Here's our solution. We built the pet ball, a robotic pet sitter, and we actually made a prototype. It does 3 things. It allows you to have remote video chats with your pets. It allows you to play games with your pets while you're not at home. And finally, it has automated training exercises that can automatically train your pet and hone its obedience while you're not at home. We designed it in Autodesk Inventor, a CAD software, and we actually sent it off to Bloomberg to 3D print. We also wired up the electronics and 3D printed some more internals, like our unique treat dispenser. And finally, we came up with a software stack that we use to drive the pet ball and control all of its functionalities. A major factor that we considered was cost. Summing together, all the parts totaled to about $260. but we considered using wholesale, and we proposed that the pet ball could be sold for $150. So that was our solution, a robotic pet sitter. And now it's time to share our solution to the wider world. So the first question that probably comes to mind is, who should you share to? Really anyone. The places like schools, companies, organizations, the experts you originally contacted, anybody who could benefit. Really, again, anyone you can share a solution to. And while you're doing so, you'll go through a sort of development cycle. You'll start by sharing your solution. Then you'll be able to get testers to test your solution. That will give you valuable feedback, which you can use to improve your solution. And keep in mind, this year especially, judges want to see iteration. They want to see that you shared your solution, got feedback, and iterated on it, and improved it so that it can be the very best. So here's how we shared our project, the pet ball. We shared it back to Bloomberg's engineering team at their FLL event. We actually demoed it for the Montville Animal Hospital. We actually tested it out on one of their dogs. And finally, we went to a family member's house and we tested our solution on a very active dog. And here you can see we're actually using video chat and the treat dispenser, which we learned were actually very effective at attracting dogs to our product. And finally, with all this done, it's time for your team to pitch your solution at the competition. The timing this year, if you remember it from last year, is slightly different from 2019. When you enter the room, you get 2 minutes for a judge's welcome, and you get 2 minutes to set up. After that, you have 5 minutes to run through the presentation and pitch your solution. And finally, after that, there's a 5-minute Q&A period in which judges can ask questions and you can answer them. What does the presentation cover? Everything from the problem to your research, to the solutions that you found, to the solution that you made, to sharing and iterating on our solution. And this year especially, judges are interested in the process of making your solution. They want to see how you got from point A to point B. They want to see all of your solution ideas, including some of the ones that you might not have picked. They want to see the plans for a solution. How do you plan on making it? What are the factors like feasibility that you consider? And finally, how did you improve it after community feedback? Your pitch should be creative, engaging, enthusiastic, and clear. And this means that you can do a variety of approaches to your presentation. For example, you can do a fancy skit, you can do a professional presentation, or you can pretend to be someone on Shark Tank and present that way. Really, the sky's the limit with the creativity that you can have here. But if you're making a pitch, you should stick to these 4 principles. Before the competition, you should also prepare a few materials, such as a poster board, which can explain your project, brochures that you can pass out to judges and other teams if you have time. And don't forget to practice the presentation so that it's down pat, and don't forget to prepare for the Q&A. So with that, let's talk about, let's show you our pitch because we have it recorded here. Okay. Let me just
Hi, we're the Dragonite! I'm Anthony.
I'm Ryan. I'm Michael.
I'm Myra.
I'm Marvin.
I'm Aaron.
I'm Ben.
Let's start the show! Bye, Cookie. I'm going to work now. Please behave and don't make a mess.
So here we're doing a funny skit just to inject some humor into the presentation.
I can't believe you did this again! Bad dog, I can't take this anymore. Do I have to give you up? Well, let's take advice from the Bergen County Animal Shelter Director.
Please don't give up your dog. Some dogs show restricted behavior because of separation anxiety. We receive about 3,000 cats and dogs each year with the number of
So here we're showing some of the statistics that we garnered in our research phase.
40% of the dogs here have behavioral problems. We try our best to find new homes for these pets. Please provide a loving home for pets.
Thank you, Shelter Director. Well, let's do some research on pet separation anxiety.
According to 2012 U.S. pet owners,
I was very
70
young back
million
then, so.
dogs and 74 million cats are owned as pets in the U.S. Based on a study by Illinois College of Veterinary Science, 20 to 40% of dogs suffer from separation anxiety. Symptoms of separation anxiety may include barking, escaping, destruction, chewing, pacing, urinating, etc.
Wow, those are very interesting facts. Well, let's go to the Montville Animal Hospital to get you checked out.
Don't worry, separation anxiety is a common problem among pets. We see 3 to 4 behavioral cases each week in the hospital. Exercising your dog is known to release this energy, And there are some excellent products on the market that can engage and monitor your pet when he is alone.
Wow, that's very interesting. Well, let's do some research on pet vibration. Let's do some research to compare the functions between some pet saving devices. Clever Pet, Furbo, IC Pooch, and Petball. Well, I'm looking for a device that is both very capable and cheap. Well, Clever Pet and Furbo are way over my budget, costing near $300 each. Wow, Petball is very cheap, costing at $150. That combines features such as
So here we are doing a little competitive
two-way
analysis. You can see we present the same chart that we had in the
games
slideshow.
into one simple yet compact device. Well, let's check out their website. Here's a design video.
So we're actually carrying out the prototype there. If you notice, the judges have an iPad. We're showing additional supplementary statistics and slides on the iPad. So that was sort of a way to add some creativity to our project.
Sort of video chat from their computer or phone. Inside of crystal clear two-way video and audio chat, owners can drive the Petball to find their pet, see their pet, play and chat with their pet, and even dispense a treat. The Petball also comes stocked with a variety of games to keep your pet engaged. Some games allow restless pets to chase the Petball, while other games take advantage of a laser pointer and the tablet's touchscreen. Other developers will be able to add their own games to our open source code. Finally, the Petball can train your pet to respond to voice commands such as sit, stand, and more, using 3 sets of words, all without the hassle of hiring a trained professional. So that's the Petball, a combination of those 3 features into the only innovative device that supports all these features and keeps your pet happy at home.
So now we're going to pass it on to Michael, who's going to talk about the engineering. So that's sort of the explanation behind our solution.
Pets from chewing on it and helps maintain balance. Using an effective system of discs, we created a flawless treat dispenser inside Petball. On the outside, we have an PIR sensor, a movable laser pointer, dozens of LEDs, and of course a slot for the Android tablet and 2 wheels for mobility. In the inside of Petball, we have an Arduino microcontroller, voltage regulator, and motor controller. Everything was designed by our team in Autodesk Inventor. The top portion was 3D printed by Bloomberg for us, and the bottom portion was laser cut into wood. Our software consists of 3 parts: the web app coded in JavaScript, the Android app coded in Java, and our special Arduino software. The price combined will be about $250. By using wholesale, we can easily cut that to $150. Combining all these pieces creates the unbeatable solution to separation anxiety, Petball.
Our journey to research and develop the Petball was a long one. And all we used about 4 types of research. We first began by researching about separation anxiety online. Then we used the report, the 2012 Pet Ownership and Demographic Sourcebook, to further understand separation anxiety. Then we crafted a survey that reached about 200 people, where we found that 54% of them believed their pets were lonely, and 82% of them.
So here we are plugging our research.
Then we visited Bloomberg's engineering team, the Mont Bay Animal Hospital, and the Berkeley County Animal Shelter to learn about pets' behavior issues, current solutions, and received expert-level advice on our product. After creating the prototype, we then presented our solution back to Bloomberg's engineering team and the Mont Bay Animal Hospital.
After the Dragonite showed us the Petball, we immediately saw its potential, from improving the lives of lonely pets to helping pets recover. We can't wait to see what the Petball will become in the near future.
We tested the Petball with a very active dog. The results were impressive. Let's check out one of our customers, Cookie's owner.
After using the Petball, I've seen so many positive changes in Cody's behavior. Now he seems so much happier than before. The end.
Thanks for watching!
And any questions?
So yeah, so that was our pitch. You saw we covered all the things that we did in our project. We covered the problem. We covered our research, including all the aspects of it. We covered our solution, including its comparing it to competing solutions. And finally, we covered how we share the solution with others. So that actually got us to win the project presentation award. It doesn't have to be perfect. Of course, we did stammer over a bunch of lines there, but we did try to be creative, and it did pay off. So let's get into some final tips. Number 1, don't be afraid to restart in the middle of the project, because we did. Earlier we talked about how we had to switch from the roadkill problem to the separation anxiety problem, and that was a place where I had to hit the reset button, and we had to completely We have to completely start from the beginning of our project. Pick based on our team's interests, not just the one that seems easiest or the one that might seem most appealing to the judges. Remember, your team is the one who's working on this project. And so if they're not interested in it, this project is not going to be the best it can be. Pick based on our team's interests. That way, everyone will be excited and passionate over it. Be creative, because the sky's the limit. Be creative in your solution, be creative in your research, be creative in who you share it to, and be creative in your pitch. And finally, have fun, because the project is meant to combine all the fun aspects of a business pitch with a research project with a fun development project. And so do the project and have fun doing it. Anyway,